Hey everybody, we are here to talk about some of the big changes coming to Destiny 2, announced yesterday in a blog post from Bungie. It was something that there's so much stuff in there, we thought we'd take some of our folks here who are deep into the game, been spending a lot of time in the endgame, and see what everybody's kind of thinking about these announced changes. Obviously, we haven't played it yet. Some of these things will start to get implemented in Curse of Osiris, the expansion that's releasing next week. But prior to that, right now what we have is this post that's telling us a cavalcade of different things that are on the way to the game. Regardless, it should be some pretty significant changes to what we've come to expect out of Destiny 2. I'm Matt Miller, and I'm joined by Dan Tack.
Hey, I'm here for some discussing Destiny, or as we call it around the table, the Double D.
You really like that, don't you?
I love it.
And Suriel Vasquez, how you doing, man?
I'm ambivalent about the term Double D, but I think I'll be okay.
Okay. Well, with that resolved, let's dive right in because there's a bunch of stuff in here. We're going to try to take some of these things point by point and talk about how it might affect stuff. But before we do, I want to get just a broad general sense from each of you about what you're kind of thinking. I mean, both of you have had a chance to read through Bungie's big post on this subject, what they called the State of Destiny 2. Dan, what did you think?
All right, so I guess I should call some where I'm coming from, too.
Yeah.
So I play on PC. I have we've completed the raid. We do it more or less every week.
Do you like long walks on the beach?
I do. In fact, I that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, so I'm playing that content. We're doing that content, and these changes look good. I like all of them. I'm not going to say no to any of them, right? These are all like, hey, this is more stuff. More stuff is always good. More options, more stuff for us to do. But I don't know if it intrinsically is going to solve what I consider more of a content issue, rather than just like, yes, you can get more stuff. It's going to be cooler stuff. It has more customization elements. These are all things I want.
Yeah.
But in some terms, I feel like due to some of the changes from Destiny 1 and Destiny 2, like I'm not sure if they're going to have the impact that I'm looking for. The difference between going into the raid now at, say, 305 compared to going in at 285 is almost negligible, right? I'm not feeling that progression happen. Like when I go to play to defeat the boss with a group of weaker players, it feels exactly the same. I still prop my cold heart up and lay into them, right? There's no real... I could tell when the group has Sins of the Past and some other great weapons, too, like, to get that real big damage differential, but... I don't know if I'm feeling the endgame progression as much as I once did.
And it's worth pointing out that you're coming at this chiefly, you and the players I think that you're most commonly playing with, coming at it from the world of PC MMOs, right?
That is true.
That you and your group are, from what you've told me, are coming over to this game and finding a lot of things that you've liked about Destiny 2, at least in the core gameplay. That echo things you have maybe wanted to see, better action, better gunplay in the MMO space, but here's also it's lacking some of the end game you had perhaps expected. Is that fair?
I'd say that's absolutely true. I don't want to get too deep into like the play group and what we expect, but yeah, my PC group comes from long-standing MMO roots. They've played tons of MMO games. They were immediately smitten by Destiny 2.
Yeah,
like best game ever, best thing ever. Holy crap!
Yeah,
we've been sleeping on this one. I would have bought a console for this. Yada yada yada. 2 weeks later, it's like, well, all right, well, we're killing that Cabal launcher thing again. That's it's a doozy this time. I think we'll beat it. Fail safe. Let's get it.
Yeah. So, Suriel, what about you? I mean, are you coming at Destiny 2? Do you feel like you've gotten more into Destiny 2 than you did to Destiny 1, or were you also a big Destiny 1 guy?
Yeah, I think I was into Destiny basically on the bookends of its life, so I was kind of into it in 2014, but didn't do any of the endgame stuff, and then I got into the endgame stuff in 2017.
Yeah.
So I think that helped me sort of have my expectations set for Destiny 2.
Sure.
And at this point, I'm playing on both console and PC, sort of kind of switching off characters. But looking at these changes, they feel like sort of the best Bungie could have done in terms of tweaking numbers. I don't know that they're 100% of the way. There's still stuff that there's stuff missing from this list that I think kind of baffles me. But this, along with some of the more content-oriented changes that are coming in Curse of Osiris, the new raid lair, the new campaign, some of the new strikes that they've shown off in the new area, I think it does like a decent job of sort of meeting the community where like a lot of this stuff you look at and you can sort of see here are the posts that they looked at for feedback, and I think they do a lot to sort of alleviate a lot of that endgame grind without making it seem like you're just going to be like trying to do the same thing and expecting a different result, which is sort of the thing that people got sort of frustrated. But I feel like I don't know that this is going to resolve everyone's sort of issues with Destiny, but I think it does a good job of being a first step.
Yeah. I mean, I come at it as people who've followed our coverage know I've done a lot of coverage of Destiny throughout its lifespan from 2013 when it was first announced on forward until today. And so I've been a pretty engaged player during that time, and also, you know, spending a lot of time as a critic writing about the various releases. And I came out of the last few months with a very ambivalent sensation about Destiny 2. I really like Destiny 2 as a core game. I think balanced against a lot of the other games that came out in 2017, other games that I spent maybe 60 to 70 hours with and really enjoyed, Destiny 2 stands very strong in that crowd. It's a really solid campaign. It offers some fun multiplayer. There's a lot of variety to some different classes that you can play, a lot of fun things to collect. It's a beautiful setting. And an appropriate follow through on a game that I really loved in Destiny 1 and its many expansions. The ambivalence comes from what comes after that first like 60 to 70 hours, right? Like I found that with each passing hour beyond that point, the cyclical experience of the end game had increasing frustrations connected to the token economy, connected to the weapon systems. Things that are not just small complaints, but really core dilemmas about how they've chosen to structure the game. In some cases, in the name of increased accessibility to new players, but in ways that make the end game lose some of the luster that I might have had with Destiny 1 and the ability to just play on a day-to-day basis with friends.
Right.
And so I come into a post like this thinking about that stuff and the ways that they can adjust it in a very short period of time, right? Like, there's only so much that a developer can do. Like, if you think about, even the game came out in early September,
Right.
you have the first few weeks that, let's be honest, everybody's just over the moon because they're in that first, like, 100 hours of the game, and they're just enjoying, like, new places to explore, new weapons to collect, new adventures to go on. There wasn't a lot of, like, criticism of where the game struggles in those days because nobody was there yet. And then, you know, the more recent months have revealed
Yeah, and
the problems.
I think it's important to point out that, like, for me personally, this might speak for you as well, Miller, is that it isn't so much that, you know, you fall off of every game. Like, as you play more of a game, you're like, okay, at this point I'm done. Or I think with Destiny, the issue here is that I could go for longer with Destiny. I could see myself playing it for longer periods of time and not getting tired of it. It's just that the specific design things that you speak to feel like they hamper my ability to enjoy the game for longer periods of time.
Yeah. I think what has emerged is this sense that, you know, you had those early weeks of praise and enthusiasm from the community, and then a period of pretty intense scrutiny from that same community over the following weeks. And all of a sudden, Bungie is in the trap of, well, we've got an expansion that on the surface is really good that we're getting an expansion to our players within just a few months after launch. I mean, everybody feels good about that, right? More content, that's great. But at the same time, it creates this artificial time scale wherein the expectation from at least some community members is that everything that is a problem with the game is going to be resolved. And there's just no time. I mean, as a development studio, all three of us at this table know how long it takes to implement a big change in a game. And a lot of that stuff just isn't going to happen on core systems within Destiny 2 by the time Curse of Osiris releases in December. It's an unrealistic expectation to believe that it was going to happen. You can fault Bungie for not doing it the way that you wanted it in the first place. But ultimately, I do think that the changes that they're outlining in this State of Destiny 2 post speak to, like, attempts to make things better, and I really appreciate that.
Sure, you know, I don't think you know, I'm intrigued by a lot of these systems. I don't think any of them are bad.
Yeah.
Again, the question is it enough? And I think we should just, like, you know, we've talked a lot about where we're coming from on this.
Right.
Let's talk about the changes.
Well, so one of the biggest things I think, and they put it right up there in front because it's maybe the biggest kind of core system that they're doing something new with, is the idea of these Masterwork tier weapons. This is a really intriguing idea to me, and I'll be honest with you guys, I just don't know what to think of it until I play with it in game.
Sure. Why is that?
Well, the legendary and exotic structure of weapons up to this point is, frankly, it's really clean. It's very sensible. I can wrap my head around it. You know, you want to fill all your slots with purples, but you get one exotic, right? You get to do something cool. You get this weird sort of extra thing that you have an exotic weapon that you put in place. All that just makes is a very sensible solution. It's very easy to wrap one's head around it. The Masterworks thing on its surface does sound like a really good idea, in that it aims to offer some of that increased replayability of collection that is lacking because you have static rewards now.
Correct.
Right? Like all the legendaries you get Uriel's gift, that's Uriel's gift.
They're all the same.
Right,
Yeah.
It's all the same. And that's very different from the way Destiny 1 did it. And with these Masterworks, that's going to change out. So they're going to have stat trackers, random rerollable stat bonuses, unique item tool tips, item detail screens. That's all just stuff I'm reading out of their update. And that does offer a new sort of carrot to chase. And I like that. And I hope that it's
we like
meaningful.
It now. We say we like it. See, there's a big problem here. Because this is funny, because this is one of the things that was actually a huge pain in the ass in Destiny 1, if I recall correctly. Right? You want to get the best possible roll on that item. And yes, it keeps you chasing, but at the same time, if I'm still killing that Cabal lander while I'm trying to get this gun, I got to tell you, my eyes are going to glaze over.
Right. And so there's stuff to chase there, but is the content that you're engaging with to do that chase, is that enough new, right?
I think that's the big question here.
And to be fair, this is going to be coinciding with a release of content. Curse of Osiris is going to bring us some new content. It's not going to be on the scale of what Destiny 2's initial launch was. I think players would be foolish, quite frankly, to be presuming that it was going to be.
It would be unreasonable.
It'd be unreasonable to expect that. But hopefully it's enough stuff to feel meaty, to feel like there's some new places to go, new things to do that can be meaningful. And we're not going to know about that until next week. Suriel, you and I were talking a little bit before about how the conventional wisdom, especially among the hardcore community, is that the static rolls on legendaries were just flat out a bad thing. But that's not necessarily the full picture. I think for some people, there's good things about it, right?
I appreciated that change in Destiny 2, just because it felt like, all right, in order to sort of have, like, you would have to look at videos and, like, this is the god drop for this weapon.
Right.
And have to spend time sort of, all right, well, I have this one gun that I'd really like. What's the best friend? Okay, well, I guess I have this gun now, and it's like a legendary that I got from the raid, but I guess I have to go back and do the raid again if I want to get it again. But so I appreciated that. Like, once you have a gun, that's it. Like, they almost went too overboard and said, here's a bunch of dupes of that gun that aren't meaningfully different. So I part of me feels like this is a bit of a step back of having these re-rollable things, but I understand where the changes the Masterwork idea is coming from, of giving you sort of something new to work toward, and it's feeling like, okay, I don't only have, Origin Story, which is my my favorite auto rifle. I have the Masterwork version of of Origin Story, which comes,
and I can try to like re-roll it to be just what I want.
Right. And having that aspect of personalization of I killed you with this gun, and also this is my gun. Like, and showing that to other players, and also I'm not sure how I feel about the sort of the fact that those weapons generate orbs on multi-kills.
Yeah, we'll see how that shakes out. The one on the surface, when I read that, the first thing I liked about it is that I do feel like the supers in Destiny 2 are on such a long timer that both in PvP and in the PvE experience, that we've lost a little bit of the superhero fantasy that the first game provided with these powers that popped up. Really, it felt like all the time. And you could say that maybe it was almost too much at times in Destiny 1, and that people found ways to exploit that to just be constantly recharging. But quite frankly, I don't think I was ever in that camp. I liked that superhero power fantasy in Destiny 1. and I've kind of been bummed that I feel less powerful in Destiny 2 by and large. And a lot of that comes from these longer timers, especially on my super. So anything that kind of makes there be some more orbs popping out, where there's a proactive thing that players are doing to like speed that process up, I kind of think I'm in favor of that.
Yeah.
I'm super in favor of it, as we say here at the Double D. But the thing is, the thing about this is I worry about it coming at this from my background in MMO content.
Yeah.
Well, now the requirement be you got to have your masterwork
Yeah,
cooking
sure.
so that you can keep that ult chaining. Let's get it rolling, because I agree with you completely now. Like, it's always like, okay, we're doing a boss fight. Save your ultimate. Use it now. That's when you use your ultimate during this encounter.
Right.
It definitely seems like that something like that widens the gap between sort of new players and experienced players. I imagine seeing if anyone who uses the like looking for guild or anything like looking for group kind of sites and just seeing a bunch of entries that say like must be experienced, need masterwork, and also in multiplayer
they're gonna say light level need masterwork now, right?
Yeah,
That's a thing that can happen.
and multiplayer, just seeing the same enemy person on the opposing team use their super multiple times because they managed to do well enough to score orbs off a masterwork weapon. It's just going to seem like, well, I guess I'm not going to be good at the multiplayer until I get a masterwork weapon. That's going to be the sought after thing. But again, it's hard to know how much it's going to affect those two things without having gotten our hands on it.
In my original review for Destiny 2, one of the things I closed out, my sort of final thoughts on that review, dealt with the idea of the complicated balance between accessibility and complexity that very often, by their very nature, in a game, those things are in opposition to one another. It's really, really hard as a developer, I think, to find that balance. And there is the dilemma here that, I mean, we have pages of stuff that we could go through talking about the ways that they're going to add complexity. But what do you, I mean, let's cast our minds back a year and a half here. What was the thing most people who weren't playing Destiny had to complain about Destiny 1? Do you guys remember? I mean, it was that, like, I just can't wrap my head around all this stuff.
I know, and
there's so many currencies. There's so many like weird systems at play. I mean, how do I even level, right? There is a danger in responding to the hardcore community and trying to put in all this new stuff that you do that again.
Mm-hmm.
And yet on the other hand, I mean, certainly, especially for those of us at this table, I mean, we want some more stuff to do. We've run out of things to be engaged with in that game.
This is actually, I don't want to go too off topic here. This has been a point in my craw about Destiny for some time. I like Destiny, by the way. I still play it. That's why I'm doing it, right?
Yeah.
Because I like the game. I think it's crazy how it tries to be the most accessible thing ever, which is like, on the base level, go and shoot some aliens and robots, right?
Yep.
It never tells you anything about, like, you've got to have this item in your inventory of a light level of X in order to get Y to drop. None of this is ever told. It's never communicated to the player inside the game.
Yeah.
There's so many like systems that are complex or not explained to the player that they've just expected to go find out somewhere else.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do they just want it to be a more like that player that doesn't know that they're getting more powerful because of X, Y, and Z? Do they just don't care that the player never cares?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I do feel also that I think the other sort of big complexity change here is the way they've sort of reworked legendary shards into being a much more useful currency of someone's going to have to look at, okay, here's all the things you can do with legendary shards now. Here's sort of like your loop of like, you should go here, you should buy this.
That's got to be good though, right?
Right, yes. Because people,
if only because there's
legendary
so many
shards
excess legendary shards.
But I do think it is going to add a layer of like, okay, well, how do I use these things?
Yeah.
That said, I think there are changes here that I think everyone, regardless of skill level or like investment, is going to agree that they are good things.
Right.
Something like duplicate protection, just on exotics across the board, is maybe my
that
favorite thing they've done.
Better be better in these next couple months, because man, how infuriating has that gotten?
The next time I get another fighting lion,
before you get that one thing you don't have, right?
Yeah.
Like I am hundreds of hours into this game with multiple exotics that I've gotten like 6 or 7 or even 8 copies of, and there's still like 1 or 2 exotics that just haven't dropped for me. It's
I'm not
infuriating.
I'm not sure if that also applies to some of the harder to get drops, like the raid stuff and the trials stuff, because I feel like that is where I'm getting most of my dupes. It's just the raid. I have like 5 copies of the auto rifle from the raid, and it's upsetting because like that's just that doing the raid should be the most rewarding thing in Destiny, and just seeing it, you know, amount to, well, I already have this gun and I got another one. I feel like I've wasted my time in the raid, which you shouldn't feel like you ever do in in a game like Destiny.
I think there's other things in here that are worth highlighting that are just sort of like blanket, like on the surface seem like very positive things. We're getting some armor ornaments that give increased options for visual customization. I think that's really good. It's a new thing to chase. Increased and improved vendor rewards. I think by and large, that's something we have to feel good about.
Complain about
being able to buy armors that were normally like were before entirely left up to chance, I think is a good way to alleviate frustration.
Yep. This is a big one for me. Better reasons and rewards for doing prestige activities. Man, in the life of the Destiny of Destiny 1, I never had a time that I couldn't get a consistent group together to go engage with the really challenging high level like challenge modes and hard mode raids and stuff like that. The very first time that happened was when the prestige raid dropped for Destiny 2. I made multiple attempts to pull a group together. We would get a couple encounters in and people would just like be like, why are we doing this?
Right.
Like this isn't that fun of an encounter on one side, and even if we do finish it, why are we doing it? And that's a big problem.
It's a huge problem.
You have to it's got to be one of those. Maybe, I mean, in an ideal world you have both, but you either need the new version of the encounter to be a really compelling loop and not just be tied into like, well, I ran out of ammo on that run, so we got to start over. Or you need something really cool that you're chasing, so that maybe that was a slog to get through that fight, but we did it.
I mean, kind of
and now I get this amazing shotgun or whatever. And I didn't.
I mean, there's been no way to incentivize like my PC guild to ever touch prestige at this point. They're just like, what? I get some little like glowy thing for a week. That's what?
Yeah. So that'll be good.
They haven't said what those rewards are, but I imagine it'll be something like, here's an ornament for the raid gun. Here's, you know, I imagine they might be mostly cosmetic. Maybe those are where they tie in the Masterworks of like, if you want the Masterwork version of the raid auto rifle, you do this prestige part of the raid.
You know, I've said before that I would be happy to see more cosmetic rewards be just part of the loop. So much of that is trapped behind the Eververse microtransaction system right now. I understand loot boxes are there. They're not going away. I get that. I don't have to like them to know that that's true. I get it. But come on. I mean, take some of that stuff and make it part of the potential reward loop. And I think you just give some, again, you get some more carrots out there in the wild for us rabbits to chase after.
Since we're talking about carrots, you know, in my ideal world, the Prestige Raid offers cosmetic only rewards, so that you don't gatekeep anyone away from, you know, Timmy playing in his pajamas can still get the same awesome gun that I have.
Okay.
But if I want to sit there, you know, and use my Saturday screaming at people saying, oh God, you didn't kill the last dog, we're all dead, you know, if I want to do that Prestige Raid, the hard thing, I get a little cool thing that shows that, you know, shows off that we did this crazy cool thing.
I mean, there is some of that now in the current version, but it just doesn't feel like it justifies what you're having to do. So the idea that there's going to be some new rewards there is great. I also was very happy. I think the strikes in Destiny 2 are quite fun and are dramatically underused. So I was happy to see that some implementation of like the heroic strike playlist they talk about here, more generous strike rewards. I think that's a really good thing to push people into, even if it is a little bit repetitive to go and play the same strikes repeatedly. I think that's really good content. And to be frank, other than the enjoyment of those strikes, there hasn't been a great reason to engage with them.
There is. It's like your time efficiency. It's completely skewed. It's like, why would I want to do that?
Nightfall or bust, basically, in terms of like getting good rewards out of strikes. And I think to that end, I don't know that they addressed sort of one of the issues that I have with the Nightfalls, which is just it feels like there are a limited number of permutations of the Nightfall, and that you sort of just run through them. Because I what was it? What's the strike that we did together? The Savantha's song or
Savathun's song,
Savathun's song, and just doing that one like 1 week off and 1 week on, just like it feels like you have this modifier system, you have a set number of scenarios, like intermix those, like, you know, mix those up a little bit more, and we are getting more strikes with this, and you know, we are getting sort of heroic strikes, which acts as a middle tier of being able to do harder versions of the strikes. without worrying about these modifiers. But I would have liked to have seen something addressing that particular issue.
Yeah. Crucible stuff, definitely a place that needs some touch up. I'm happy to hear they're trying to tackle that by putting a focus. They're recommitting to something they'd said earlier, that private matches for Crucible are coming.
Right. Cool. Not until next year, though.
Until next year. It's still, this is another thing that's still hard for me to wrap my head around. Like, this was a thing that was part of Destiny 1 that, like, not having it at launch really felt like missing the boat a little bit on encouraging the growing competitive scene for the game and the streaming potential for the game. So that's a really good thing. That
adding ranked,
committing to that ranked PvP,
matches, quitter penalties.
Quitter penalties is big.
Because that was last night. I was playing with my two brothers, and we had finished. Two of us had finished the milestone for multiplayer, and the other one was like at 97%.
Yeah, sure.
So we just, all right, get 3 kills. We're out. Like we're just gonna not do like this last match because we just want to move on to the next thing. So I think
you're the guy, Suriel.
Yeah, I'm that jerk.
Right.
So I think having a quitter penalty will have me stick through that next match.
Yeah.
They could also sort of smooth out some of those rewards if you're in a group, but
they could.
That's my thing.
So I think all that stuff sounds like it'll be good.
Yeah.
I'm also happy to see. I quite like. Well, I used to love Iron Banner Week in Destiny 1.
Right.
I like that Iron Banner has been back this time, but it has not been as fun.
Do you think? I'm confused about what the difference between Iron Banner is now.
Yeah.
Now that the whole light levels out of it, it's just the Crucible.
Yes, it's sort of just like, here's a dedicated week of Crucible with some rewards to chase. And I think
I would almost say like that the Masterwork stuff would have been something interesting to implement in Iron Banner, of just like in Iron Banner, now these weapons can shine.
I think there's the potential we'll see that. We don't have all the detail here about exactly how all this stuff is going to be implemented. I would quite frankly be surprised if Iron Banner doesn't make one of the things that distinguishes it be the prevalence and the ability to get access to more Masterwork stuff.
Sure.
But that's conjecture on my part. Yeah. But at the very least, improvements to the uniqueness of rewards for faction rallies and Iron Banner is really important. It's great that they have some consistent like weekly events that they're rolling out for the game. They're going to continue that into what they're calling Season 2, which is Curse of Osiris and forward. But the faction rallies and the Iron Banner, much as I like them being there, they are not up to their potential yet for the activities you could be engaged with or the rewards that you're going to be getting for it.
Sure.
So that'll be good.
Right. And also just to go along with some of the other stuff we talked about, being able to buy those rewards, because I think Iron Banner was maybe the worst instance of just you have a limited amount of time. If you want this armor set for Season 1, which is a limited time reward, you just have to keep playing and praying that you get the item set you want, or like the one piece of that set you're missing. So being able to buy that stuff, I think will smooth that out a lot.
I hope so, because man, I chased the Hunter chest piece for 42 packages.
That's a lot of packages
without getting it.
Let's move on. Lord Shaxx, be proud.
So mod economy. Here's another thing that's kind of interesting. Gunsmith is changing out how they're approaching mods. A lot of this stuff is going to be in the new year. You had some notes about this, Suriel, right?
Yeah. So mods can now, your rare mods can now be dismantled to get legendary shards and I think legendary components that will let you build legendary mods. Additionally, the gunsmith will now also sell a regular rotation of mods that you can get for legendary shards.
Yeah.
Which I think is good, because I think everyone was basically chasing kinetic legendary mods because they were the hardest to get.
Super rare.
Because there's no rare version of that mod to do anything with.
Yeah.
So I think that's a net positive, and also clearing up inventory space by just, I am good to dismantle as much of this stuff as I can and try to get in more legendary mods into this inventory, I think is a good thing.
Get more ways to get mods? Sounds great.
Not to mention the fact that, and we're going to talk about this, don't you worry, before the end of this conversation, but, the mod inventory thing is one part of the broader vault and inventory management problem that this change should help with, right? If we can clear some blues out of that mod inventory, I still don't think that's a real solution to
half
the
step.
problem,
Yeah.
but it does ease the burden of being like, well, my mod inventory is full, so I can either spend 15 minutes like fiddling with my vault and putting stuff away and doing all that kind of nonsense, or just say screw it and I'll go and do something else. Right?
Yeah.
That's what I do.
That's the smart decision.
Right?
Yep.
Because like you just don't want to have to deal with it. And so if I can get rid of some blues and clear that space out, I think that should make that process a little bit better. But again, we're kind of talking conjecture here because we haven't played how it's going to be. But I'm hopeful about that part anyway. They went into some specifics about like what's coming through just in these next few weeks too, which we should highlight. You know, a lot of these broader updates they kind of talked about as being, well, it's going to be December through into the new year, right? Like the Crucible stuff is a good example of that. A lot of that's not going to be till the new year. But with the December stuff, they're pretty specific, right? They talked about, I mean, you have some of the things in there, right?
So the timeline is that on December 5th, we are going to get all the changes.
Which is when Curse drops as well, right?
That's when we get the changes to the tokens economy, which will make it a lot. Basically, everyone gets a lot more tokens, and the gunsmith, I think his requirements to get a rep basically level increased a little bit, but I think overall you get more tokens. On the 5th also is all the stuff with the ornaments, which will accompany the new raid, which will follow on the following week, and then all the changes to mods. That's the 5th. And then on the 12th, that's when we get the raid layer, which will also add the gift consumables, which is sort of like a multiplayer thing that you can buy and everyone gets a nice little bonus. The Masterwork weapons, the being able to buy faction armor, and then some of the changes to Xur. That's all the stuff that's on the 12th.
The Xur thing will be a nice little, like, I don't know that this is like the greatest solution to the problem, but the fact that you can, like, on a weekly basis get this engram from Xur and kind of be guaranteed, like, one of those exotics I haven't gotten yet, I'm going to get. Like, I think the better solution for there to just be a more consistent exotic drop rate and that it paid better attention to what you should be getting.
Right.
But barring that, for people like myself who are kind of completionists with their exotic collection, I can feel like, well, I can finally kind of do that. And that'll be cool. So I am happy about the simpler 3 of coins thing is also not to be ignored.
Not stackable, which is good.
Not stackable.
Just hit it and set it and forget it.
Set it and forget it, which I think is good. I don't know about the return of that system just across the board, whether that's a good idea. I don't know that I was ever a big fan of the idea that you just always needed to have one of these things on.
It was a pain.
Right. This feels like another way to drain your legendary shards resource. And I'm not entirely sure how this stacks with fire team medallions, because I feel like the fire team medallions were supposed to be the 3 of coins here, but this seems like a very specific addition here.
So it's fair to say Verdict's kind of out on that little.
We have no idea.
We'll see how that ends up working.
I'm not totally sold yet on like, oh yay, we get more
3 of coins.
3 of coins.
My favorite part of
this
Destiny
thing that
I
actually didn't love in Destiny 1. There's a little thing in here that I think is important. The exploit safeguards on chests this is Bungie's terminology for it. This was basically the thing that, like, when you were out farming chests, you could sometimes get to the point that if you farmed too well, you wouldn't get drops from the chests.
Oh yeah,
that was weird.
And, so you could do that with the faction tokens as well.
Yeah, so they are appearing to make that a little bit better. They say it's greatly relaxed, and players should encounter them less frequently.
Right. And they said, like, at worst, it'll be down to 30% instead of 0%.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, yeah. There's another thing I'm kind of on the fence about. We'll see how that works. It feels like that system should just kind of go away. I don't really get why that's there. If I'm going to put in the time to go, if I want to farm, like, there's players out there. That's what they do. They don't mind grinding, and they, like, do that. And so why
punish them?
Yeah.
As we say here at the Double D, if you do an event, you should get 100% of the rewards for 100% of the event. There's, it shouldn't fall off just because you're good at it.
Yeah. Let's see. We got it's a couple of the other things. The reputation tokens, adjusting reputation tokens. There's a whole conversation we can have about the token economy in the end game here and some challenges that creates. creating drama in things like the raid or the absence of drama rather. But they are doing some changes to the rep tokens just to make it a little bit more, the structure be a little bit more sensible. Daily challenges will have reputation token awards increase across the board. Cade's treasure chests are always going to have, at minimum, some destination appropriate rep tokens. That's a good thing. Strikes get you more tokens. Common quality destination resource tokens all have their drop rates increased to 100% and values per token increased as well. That's good. There's sort of a whole lineup of this stuff.
Yeah. Not having to finish the raid in order to start cashing in raid tokens, I think, is a nice alleviation, like quality of life improvement.
Yeah. And so, we're skipping over a few things here, but I mean, I think that covers a lot of the big bases. One of the other things they did take some time to step away to address was the XP issue,
right?
Which has, I think, to be honest, was the camel that broke the camel's back here this last couple of weeks that made them switch gears.
I think that there had been a lot of simmering frustrations,
yes.
And then in wake of this post, I think that they were going to probably discuss most of this, like a large part of this stuff, on their stream. But I think someone finding the XP exploit and people being really mad about it, sort of the community was sort of had crossed their arms and said, this better be good.
The XP thing really did. Destiny has been a game that the community has had a very open line of communication with Bungie about, and I think Bungie, by and large, has been a studio that is very receptive to hearing stuff. Certainly, they have in my conversations with them when I have visited the studio. They listen more than I think a lot of players think that they do, and they also play more than I think a lot of people think they do. There's a lot. You have probably played with Bungie people on a team with you, and you don't know it because most of those guys are running through their own game and seeing the same things that we see that's wrong with it. In this case, though, the XP thing really did feel like this just feels real dicey.
It's a good word for it.
So, I mean, do we want to run through their quote? They
sure.
basically apologized and said,
they didn't specifically apologize.
Right. So here's sort of their statement. Last weekend, we disabled a scaling mechanism that adjusted XP gains up and down without reflecting those adjustments in the UI. Our intention was to keep slower pace activities as rewarding as high-intensity grinding without confusing variations in displayed XP values, but the silent nature of the mechanic betrayed the expectation of transparency that you have for Destiny 2. We were able to disable the system.
That's
okay.
I mean, that gives us the root of it, right?
Sure.
They go on to talk about the specifics of it, which I think are important. But the short version is that they're still working on it. The thing that is not brought up here is that whether it is fair or not, it certainly felt like this was a system that was you should go buy some loot boxes.
Mm-hmm. Like we say at the Double D, that's a whole lot of words for oops, we got caught.
Yeah.
I mean,
it certainly feels that way. That might be being unfair to Bungie.
It probably is, but
I think in
know
their statement they specifically said this is something we intended to be in the game, but we didn't reflect it in the UI.
No, and we didn't communicate that to the players, and I don't know. I feel like that's a problem, especially when you're talking about the core system that is tied in with how you get the reward that otherwise you're going to have to spend money on.
As someone who was spending my hard-earned bright dust on those things for my team to get more experience,
it
certainly doesn't make me feel great about that when big numbers were showing up and the bar wasn't moving.
I think that's when real money is involved, the benefit of a doubt goes the other way, of just everything is just angled towards you guys are exploiting us to make more money.
Yeah, and that's can be frustrating. I mean, by the way, let's be clear about the point that Bungie, Activision, any company making a video game, their primary motive is to make money. There's no problem with that. These are businesses that deserve to be able to make money off of the products that they work hard on. In the case of this kind of practice, though, I think it's hard to take, especially when you're talking about a game that for a lot of us is a lifestyle choice of how we spend our hobby time and how we spend our free time, to not have pretty clear lines of communication
it's about transparency.
Yeah, you got to know what you're getting yourself into. And already I think there's some of us players of Destiny who feel like the microtransaction stuff has gone too far, that there's too much stuff, too many of the rewards are looped into that system. And so this feels like an additional slap in the face that all that stuff, all that is true, and we've been sort of throttling back XP.
Right. Not only was this deal sort of tilted in our favor, we were also sort of loading the dice as well.
Yeah, right.
That's that's whether or not that was how it was, how it was. That's what it appears to be, right?
It is.
To anyone observing the situation from the outside.
So good on them for addressing it directly here, even if it's a little late. I do hope that they imply that there's a lot of stuff that they have not addressed yet and that is not reflected in the final game. I hope that that's something that is prioritized highly of getting in there quick. What's not in this post?
I think we should immediately just say like a vault increase,
Yeah.
vault space increase. It just seems wild to me that
We're never
going to
get that, right?
That
I don't understand
But-
this
exactly.
aspect of the game. Especially after they dropped old generation consoles in the middle of Destiny 1's life cycle, it was very hard for me to understand the idea of like a collection based game where I couldn't actively pursue all the sets of armor, exotics, and all that kind of stuff without constant inventory management. And that problem is not alleviated in Destiny 2. And I was, that might have been one of the things I was most disappointed about here, because that does not seem like a thing that should be such a fundamental core problem to have to fix. Like when you're talking about like, you need to change the weapon types, right? Like, which is a thing that some of the fans are saying right now. That's a huge change. That's fundamentally altering the game. I did not expect that as part of a December or New Year's update. The vault problem was something that I had hoped there would be a little bit more, at least talk about. It doesn't, without it even being mentioned here, it feels like the amount of time that dedicated players are having to spend on inventory management and vault stuff, or making the choice to just like, I'm just going to delete everything. Like, I'm just not going to deal with this anymore. Those are your choices right now. Without mentioning it, it feels like it's not acknowledged as being a problem. Maybe they don't see it as a problem. Maybe they just would like to push their player base towards the latter of those solutions.
We
which
want
is like,
them to be forced to make interesting choices.
yes, and be forced to delete some of their rewards that they've gotten through hard-earned play. That does not make sense to me.
Yeah.
It
Also, like, I mean, even at the root of it, it's just, it sort of kills a lot of that motivation in the first place of, like some of the faction rally stuff I just ended up not participating in at all, because this is just going to clutter up my inventory. These sets I don't think are as good as some of the stuff I already have.
Yeah.
So why even bother?
Sure.
Because there's no incentive to just have them on like, my mantle, in a way.
So that was maybe the biggest thing for me. Were there other things for you guys that like you felt like were important? I know you've spoken to the idea of like the constant repetition of like certain events and things like
I
that.
just want to be clear. I'm still having fun with the game.
Yeah.
I mean, we've come down pretty hard on Destiny, I think, in this discussion, but in a good way. Just talking about our experiences and what's coming.
Yep.
I guess I need to know what the expansion has to offer in more detail before I can make any analysis, because this is very much tied to that.
It is. I mean, that's the big elephant in the room here, right? Is that most of this stuff is going to begin rolling out in sort of concert with this first major expansion.
Right. So as much as we complain about, there isn't this much stuff to do. Nightfalls are kind of that was my other big thing, is the lack of Nightfall changes.
Yeah.
But for all we know, heroic strikes are gonna be this big thing that brings it back, and people will enjoy those again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to know how much of that repetition is going to remain here. But that said, it just feels like people are still going to run out of things to do. I think. Well, I mean, they're going to have more ways to see the same content, which is going to be Destiny's sort of bigger issue to solve. Is how do we sort of get players to be excited about running through these same sort of strikes, some raid encounters, things again, and making them feel new beyond the rewards you're chasing for them.
Right.
Yeah.
You can never make enough content to satisfy any player.
No,
that's impossible.
that's absolutely
but you can. It's really about just creating that play space that you're enjoying, going through the content multiple times instead of hearing Failsafe say, "Hey, I'm going to predict the odds that you beat this lander again." I'm like, "Oh yeah, here we go."
Can't wait to hear that line again. I mean, I'm pretty stoked about Curse of Osiris for a few reasons. I mean, Vex are my favorite of the bad guys.
Sure.
I like the Vex. I'm glad that we're getting back to those guys and getting a little bit more of their motivations just from a story perspective. Also from a storytelling perspective, I think they've done a good job in a way that they really haven't yet up to this point with a lot of other characters, of like teasing something significant with this Osiris guy, right? I hope he's cool. You've had a chance to play some of that, Suriel, and I don't want you to spoil it for me or anybody else, but cool, kind of cool.
I think they do. I think they do a pretty good job of making it feel like this self-contained story matters in the wider context of Destiny, while also kind of shoving it under the rug like you would with something that wasn't like a major expansion.
Yeah.
And I did enjoy Osiris and Sagira, his ghost. I think as characters, I thought the campaign is breezy, but I enjoyed my time with it.
Yeah. So I'm stoked to kind of see that stuff firsthand, and I hope that in combination with these big sort of like more system-based changes, that it can loop me back in for some fun during the holiday season, right? Like I think that when it comes right down to it, the hard thing to come to terms with for me is that like throughout really from like the latter part of 2014 through the middle of this year, I was playing Destiny 1 all the time. Right, like I really was playing on a multiple times a week basis. Certainly with a bigger boost around big releases, where I'd really be playing hardcore. But at other times, there always felt like there was something compelling for me to engage with and enjoy the experience as a hobby. In addition to my other stuff that I was enjoying, TV shows I was watching, other games I was playing, Destiny became like my golf.
Sure.
What golf is for some people, maybe, right?
Go away for the weekend and play some Destiny.
Yeah, like there's a little bit of that going on, right? Like I'm gonna go raid with my friends this weekend. I'm gonna be doing that stuff, and I, as much as I really did enjoy Destiny 2 in the early time that I spent with it. It has not had that same quality for me in the last. I would say, so, I started on launch day in early September and played hardcore for the first month, and then it started being like, well, I guess I can log in. My friend is free tonight who has a kid, and he's free, so let's go do a couple strikes. But it was more just like, I'm going to go hang out with him,
right,
than it was that I also felt like I was like doing something for my character and like getting better. And that makes me a little sad, because I want that. And, you, Dan, you played on PC.
Yes, so we got content. We're getting a content update much sooner relatively than you guys had.
But you have also felt the pain already a little bit, right?
4 weeks in, I can definitely say like the motivation, incentivization. I don't feel it as much. I mean, we've done the stuff that's there, and sure, we had fun doing it. But now it's more like, what's in it for me?
Yeah,
I'm not really having a blast when we're in there.
Yeah,
and I'm not going to get anything cool.
Again,
like you said, if we're on Discord or whatever, we're hanging out.
Yep, it's always fun to hang out.
Right,
but I would like there to be an extra layer of things. And I will say, in Destiny's defense, Destiny 2 and the original Destiny, it is always fun to go shoot some aliens in the head.
That it is.
Right? Like Destiny, we've focused here a lot on the specifics of like this endgame experience, but part of the reason that we spend so much time on it is that like the core experience, the core like 30-second loop of Destiny is really, really good.
It really is.
Like the gunplay is top tier in any video game I can think of.
It's extremely satisfying, whether you're sniping a Vex weak spot or blowing up a cluster rocket in the perfect location.
And
nice.
That has never changed. And I think there's a case to be made that like some of the stuff related to the weapon types in Destiny 2 have taken away a little bit of the variety there. That is a larger issue that is not going to get addressed by this patch. But by and large, I do still have a lot of fun with the gunplay in Destiny 2 and going to these beautifully drawn worlds and settings that they've made. I just want there to be something that kind of puts its hooks in me again.
Yeah, sure. And I think my sort of larger reaching sort of concern here is that you look at a lot of these changes and they feel sort of like we're taking more stuff from Destiny 1 and we're adding it to Destiny 2, which I think sort of speaks to, like, I think sort of when the game came out and once people sort of got to the other side of, loving it, sort of the complaint was like, Destiny, why didn't they just, bolt on as much as they could to Destiny 1 instead of starting new, which, you have your incentives of like, we want to make a new sequel, but this definitely, I think, as much as I like all these changes, they definitely seem like they bolster that argument. Some of like ornaments, heroic strikes, some of those those were all things that are in Destiny
Right.
1. So it feels like they are sort of still playing catch up, and I'm sort of waiting for the new parts of Destiny 2 to start shining, because right now it feels like the biggest difference right now, like you said, is the weapon types.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is not a universally loved
Yeah.
system.
Well,
I
we're
think
getting
it's
some
fair to
other
say.
really cool stuff,
Yeah.
Destiny 2. We get the Alexa Ghost. I can't wait to.
I am excited. I'm kind of excited just to
I
see
am
how
too.
that thing works.
I got this really strange curiosity about
Yeah.
using one of those.
They just announced this idea. For people who didn't follow the news, basically the idea of like a actual physical ghost that's going to sit there and pair with your Alexa device, so you can actually talk to your ghost and do things like. I mean, I don't think they've revealed all the stuff that you can do with it, but I think the idea is like it's stuff like, Alexa, have my ghost equip my best armor, right? Or tell me about the Vex, or I don't know. I mean,
I
we'll
would use
see.
that all the time.
I think that's pretty fun.
How specific are they going to get? It's like,
I don't know.
Ghost, transfer my origin story over to my 305 Hunter. Please equip it as well.
I don't know, but I'm curious. I mean, I think that's a pretty clever idea if it works well. Maybe it's a little gimmicky.
It's super gimmicky, but that's
Yeah.
okay. I can still like it.
I think I'm with you. I'm on board. At least try it out. All right. Well, that covers a lot of the bases. We're gonna have a lot more to talk about with this game, like
Especially
a week
once
from
it
now.
comes out.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Very
Curse of
soon.
Osiris is gonna tell us an awful lot. And seeing how these things roll out in the weeks that follow, will give us a lot more kind of firm things to understand. But by and large, moves in the right direction here.
Yeah.
Even if they're not completely changing everything that we would like to see change. Agreed?
It's like we say here at the Double D. It's a good start.
All right, Dan. You got it.
One
All
of
right.
these days, we'll do another episode of the Double Day.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for watching. Keep an eye out next week. We will be covering a bunch of stuff around Curse of Osiris as it launches, as well as the rest of the stuff that connects to Destiny 2's updates. We appreciate you tuning in, and we will catch you next time.